Hello and welcome to TSKF1. My name's Rich, and this is your daily dose of F1 news. Today, we're going to be talking about Toto Wolff and his call for hard stops for teams. We're going to be talking about Fernando Alonso and what Pat Symmonds has had to say, what Lewis Hamilton has had to say about James Vowles going to Williams, and we're going to be talking about Max Verstappen and the virtual Le Mans race that happened this weekend. Please don't forget to hit that like on the video and also subscribe to the channel. You might want to hang around for my opinion on the Max Verstappen comments around virtual Le Mans, because it seems like my opinion is a little different to the jury of the internet. So we will see very soon, but please do hang around for that. As I'm probably going to speak about that for a little while. Yes. So let's get into the news. Let's get into the news now. We're going to start with Toto Wolff here. He is talking about hard stops for teams because of how many races the teams have to deal with each season now, and there's so much traveling and going around the world. 23 scheduled races, 24 if China is replaced. And he's saying that teams need to protect themselves, but not only him, like in management, but the core of the racing team in order to protect performance. We need to protect ourselves from ourselves, which I think is a really sort of mature way to look at it. I can push through, each of us can push through and do 24 races, some of us easier than others, because we travel better. For most of our engineers, mechanics, and marketing people, the traveling is much more stressful. So therefore, there needs to be some sort of rotation. What I will do is put in a hard stop as to how many races each and everyone can do, and you can't go above it because we need to protect ourselves from ourselves. And I really like that, because it would be very easy for Toto Wolff to say, well, I'm fine, you guys are fine, this is the job, let's get on with it. But at the end of the day, engineers, marketing people, and so on, they are normal people, and that is a hell of a long time to be away and a hell of a long time to be traveling and things like that. Some might consider it a dream job. It'd be a very nice job to have, and I'm sure they do appreciate it, but 24 races in a year, that's a lot of back-to-back races all around the globe. I think this is a good move. I think it will benefit Mercedes going forward, and I just think it's a good thing. Though he did say that in the Japanese Grand Prix they ran an experiment at Mercedes. For Japan, the experiment was one I didn't like at all, because you're sitting in the dark at home with the whole setup. You can't see people, and you're out of sync with real life. So I'd rather travel. And that was him basically being absent, but he had everything in his apartment, like all the data and stuff. And he said, but it's an experiment and it's something that helps me regenerate. In my office, in my apartment, I've got the full setup, intercom, all the data channels, and I have the live feed where I can interact with the team as if I were there. Is it the same quality? Definitely not, because I'm not looking into people's eyes and I don't see the cars. There was a situation where I asked Bradley and James why we were delaying an exit, and it was because there was work being done to the rear wing, and I didn't see that. So it's not the same quality. But I think there's value to what he's saying. I think it doesn't matter how dream a job you've got. It doesn't matter how well you are financially compensated for your time. Tiredness is tiredness, and tiredness does affect performance. And I always quite like Toto as a team boss. He seems fairly well balanced about things, and I think this just shows how deeply F1 bosses have to look at what's going on. And I think Mercedes will only benefit from making sure they've got sort of a well-rested team on rotation. But I think it's a good idea. Dan saying, agreed, everyone I know who worked on the track teams has said the travel is exhausting. It doesn't shock me, Dan. It doesn't shock me. You're all over the place, right? You are all over the place. I'm kind of going to power through a bit because I feel like I've got quite a lot to say about the whole Max Verstappen thing. Fernando Alonso. Now, Pat Symmonds, who's an F1 chief now, but I believe worked as his engineer some years back at Renault, or one of the bosses at Renault. I could be wrong. But Pat Symmonds has basically said at Autosport this weekend that if you put Fernando in the right car, I'm damn sure he would win races. He has a fabulous ability. You've got to remember, he's only won the championship twice, but he's finished second a lot on another 3 occasions. And any of those ones where he's finished second, he wasn't far off winning. He could have been a 5-time world champion for a little bit of fate. And I think that's true. It all depends what Aston Martin can deliver. And I've said I think Aston Martin will deliver, but maybe too late for Fernando Alonso. I think May this year is the aim for Aston Martin to be in their new facility, which we've done a video about on this channel, if you want to go back and have a look. And I think it's 2024 next year for their new wind tunnel. So really, you're looking at next season for this new facility to have made the next car, and then the season after for their own wind tunnel to have been involved. And I can't help but feel it might be a little bit late for Alonso, but I do hope Aston Martin surprise us, because who wouldn't want an extra team up at the sharp end of Formula One? Do you guys think he can win again? I do. I think last season he showed he's got the tenacity he's always had. He's definitely got that turn of pace. Admittedly, I think in the points he ended up behind Ocon, but he had far more mechanical retirements. I think you give Alonso the right car. I think he can get race victories. Then again, you know, dare I say it, Vettel towards the end, maybe it was because the pressure had gone, but Vettel towards the end, I liked it because you just saw flashes of old Vettel, like at Circuit of the Americas, putting his fist up as he crossed the line and things like that, and Japan fighting with Alonso. So maybe there's a bit there. John's saying he can definitely win again. But yeah, I feel the same way. I think he can win again. Next piece of news, George Russell has been talking about when he first came into Formula One and being so far behind Lando Norris and Albon when finishing, but he finished ahead of them in Formula 2. And he was just saying it was a really unique season for his first season in Formula One, joining Williams, a team that was on the brink of bankruptcy. It was a team that every single race weekend was racing to survive. It wasn't racing to perform. The team was racing to survive, and there were 800 jobs at stake. There was no doubt when I got to the first race in Australia, I thought, I'm here in Formula One, almost one dream accomplished. Then got to the track and were 4 seconds off the pace. The car's falling apart. We're being lapped 2 or 3 times. You kind of think to yourself, is this a dream? But I think I've always had quite a rational view on things. However, seeing Alex in Red Bull scoring podiums and being the man to a degree, and Lando equally always in the points, that was sort of difficult to digest because I've just come from Formula 2 where I beat them. And I've said this about George Russell, that while he's now in the Mercedes car, I feel like Williams was a very good apprenticeship, if you like, in Formula One, because he's seen the dramatic other end of the grid, and he's had to deal with it, and he's had to perform, which he did. So now he knows what it is that he potentially has around him, you know. And that's kind of what I was hoping with Mick Schumacher. Like Fernando Alonso, he started at Minardi, if I'm not mistaken, as did Mark Webber. And sometimes I think you find this, you do get drivers who get this sort of more difficult than some apprenticeship at first in the sport, and then it can pay off later because they've had that sort of struggle, if you like, if it can be a struggle to be an F1 driver. But you know, and it must have been quite a humbling experience for Russell, having beaten them, then he's so far behind them. And let's not forget, right, people now say stuff like, oh, well, Russell's beaten Lewis and all this lot, and they're saying lots of good things about Russell. For some reason, when Russell drove for Williams, especially early days, Russell was useless according to those same people. Russell's always been an immense driver. He just didn't have the car around him to do it. And where did it go on here? Where did it go on? He did go on here. I thought, even though they're finishing in the points and they're scoring podiums, I'm not going to score points or podiums. I'm here to win, and I want to win. Even though they're finishing ahead of me, we're all going through this journey together, learning. And I was part of Mercedes, and I felt like my time will come. So I think from a difficult situation, you've got to try and look at the positives from it. I was driving at the back of the grid, kind of under the radar. I was making a few mistakes that season, but not many people noticed because the spotlight wasn't on me. The spotlight was on the guys at the front, and equally was on Lando and Alex, which isn't wrong. It wasn't wrong. Albon got absolutely savage, didn't he? If they ever made a mistake, the whole world knew about it. So I saw that as an opportunity. I mean, this is a really intelligent approach, isn't it? I thought, I'm in Formula One, going 21 different countries, 21 different races, different circuits. This is my opportunity to learn and perhaps try things that, for example, Alex and Lando didn't have the opportunity to because the spotlight wasn't on every single weekend. And I think that's a really, really intelligent stance, honestly. I agree. It's a good thing for him at Williams. He must have doubted things. Very patient. Yeah. I never want to look back and say things should have been different. I think every single opportunity, every single year, whether it's good or a bad year, adds to your development and made me who I am. If I was in a Mercedes fighting for victories, I wouldn't have those experiences. And I've probably been through, in that regard, maybe more than what Alex and Lando has. Lando has been at McLaren now for 5 years. He's been fighting for the odd podium or pole position for 5 years now, whereas I've been at every end of the spectrum. You've got to see that as an advantage. He hasn't been right at the back of the grid. Equally, he's not been right at the front of the grid in McLaren. It's through no fault of his own. Lando is an exceptional driver, but that's an advantage, and I've got to take from that. And I think it is. I think they're very measured and intelligent comments there from Russell. Honestly, he's always struck me as a lad who's got his head screwed on, and he really seems to have. He's always seemed very measured and stuff. I think he does have that angry streak in him. We've heard it a few times in the car, in the Mercedes even, and sometimes he can make a mistake, but I think he can analyze a situation really, really well, and that's a huge strength. He seems to, anyway. He seems to. Now, I did have another story lined up, but I don't know if I've got a picture. Right, we'll leave him a second. The other story that I'll just sort of talk about really quick was Lewis Hamilton just comments for James Vowles going to Williams and just saying it's an amazing opportunity. And he spoke with Toto Wolff, who told Lewis, and Lewis Hamilton's first response was, "That's amazing for James." And Vowles confirmed that Vowles said he called Lewis Hamilton. For what it's worth, I called him, and those were the first words that came out of his mouth. Not insulting me or telling me he's disappointed. It was quite the opposite. In fact, I'd probably say throughout Mercedes, I've had the. I think this is misquoted. I've been fortunate enough that nearly everyone I've spoken to has just been incredibly happy about this. So that's really cool. That James Vowles had been with Mercedes with that team, if you like, in previous guises as well for 20 years. So it must have been quite the decision for him to do that. And it's awesome that Mercedes and the drivers and everything have been so supportive of it. I just thought that needed saying, really. Right, well, who wants to hear about my take on the virtual Le Mans situation and Max Verstappen? Now, I'm going to prefix this with the fact I know that my opinion is going to be different from a lot of people. I know that the comments could quite easily go quite badly here. So, if you don't know, this weekend the virtual Le Mans race was held on R Factor 2, a simulation platform on the PC. There were many issues early doors within the race where there were 2 red flags because of server issues and then server disconnections where drivers literally were disconnecting from the race. And Max Verstappen was taking part as part of Team Redline, and they retired the car. And in short, Max Verstappen called called it a clown show, and that he's going to be uninstalling it and not taking part again and going somewhere else, and he hopes everyone follows him. Right. So I'll start off by saying what my opinion really does begin with the fact that there are a lot of very good people that work very hard to try to provide the very best platform that they can. And I can't get away from that. And I've really thought about this a lot. I've taken part in 24-hour endurance races. I've taken part or was going to take part in 24-hour endurance races that have been completely cancelled or have crashed or have kicked people and not on R Factor 2. And I'm not going to name other platforms because it's not about that. But I think it's really important to balance it out that not just R Factor 2 has this problem. Like many other platforms have had this problem. Don't be, and what I would say is don't be ignorant and naive about your own lack of understanding about how servers work and how video games work and how the internet works because you're upset, right? Now, it pains me because there are 2 different things at work here. Okay, well, there are a few different things at work. You've got Motorsport Games who own R Factor 2 and have bought up the rights to everything, basically, apart from F1, pretty much. They've got IndyCar, they've got NASCAR, they've got Le Mans, they've got British touring cars, and people hate them for that. And they're the parent company. But then they've got R Factor 2 as a simulation platform that they've also bought, okay? And people already have a hatred for Motorsport Games because they've got these exclusive rights. Now, look, what I will say on that, no, I don't agree with exclusivity. I think it's bad for sim racing. I think it's bad for gaming in general. But it happens all over gaming. But I think we also have to balance exclusivity out with you can't say you hate exclusivity when only one platform was really providing it in the first place, creating its own exclusivity. If that doesn't make sense to you, it's because you're not involved in it, but it should make sense to a lot of people. If something's only on one platform, that's basically exclusive already. So all they've done is got the exclusivity on their platform instead, and people don't like that, right? But so people don't like Motorsport Games. Now, the Motorsport Games ownership doesn't affect the good people that are working on R Factor 2. And I can't help but be extremely defensive about normal people. However annoyed people are about what happened with the virtual Le Mans race, I can tell you with first-hand conversations, people involved in it are devastated, like truly devastated, because they work hard and they care. And people saying ignorant nonsense like MSG need to go bankrupt is painful, because that is a person's job, like you or me, people who work hard like you or me. And I wish people would have a little bit of respect and a little bit of decorum. And instead of saying my platform's better than your platform, or calling everything out and calling people clowns completely uncalled for, how about we say, what can we do to help, and how can we make sure we've got more than one option on the sim racing, in the sim racing genre? Because options are what matter. Options is against exclusivity. The thing that everyone is screaming about, everyone seems to want, which is baffling to me. Exclusivity, like, people are basically saying exclusivity, I hate it unless it's on the platform of my choice. Then we can have all the exclusive we want. That's not right. That's not right. But it's not constructive. And people saying this isn't a good look for sim racing. Have a little bit of criticality about your thinking. Everyone going off on one on Twitter, everyone going off on one on Facebook. You are making it look far worse than it did. You just are. The issues that, like, okay, we've got a little bit of a news flash as well. Everyone was saying how this is a terrible look for sim racing and people coming into sim racing. Normal people weren't sat for 24 hours watching the race. It would have gone largely unnoticed. Pretty much. I'm almost certain. The reaction is what's caused the drama. And everyone freaking out. And then the Formula One world champion calling it a clown show. Now, look, people may continue and say, but Rich, you don't know what it's like. He prepared for 5 months. I do. I've been there. What's worse? What's worse? Is it worse to have this happen, or is it worse at 4 a.m. after a 4-hour stint driving your car into a wall and destroying it for the rest of your teammates? I don't know. But honestly, I'm disappointed at the reaction. I'm disappointed at my fellow. I won't come. Okay, someone called me an influencer yesterday. I wouldn't call myself it, but I'm deeply disappointed with fellow influencers in stoking this. It's very difficult because this is an F1 real life thing, right? And but I've been involved in sim racing now for more than a decade, like properly involved with sim racing for more than a decade. And how I saw people react was childish, low IQ, and people just need to be better. It's a video game. Let's make it better. Let's see if we can help with mass testing. Let's see if there's anything we can do at all. Not throw them under the bus because we don't agree with their particular exclusive deal. There are other platforms with deals that people don't want to be on. That's basically exclusivity. And I know I've said this a lot, but there are people that aren't involved and have never been involved that are literally just jumping in on it. And look, people fall for it, whether it's real life, whether it's sim racing. The thing is, Matthew, it's not that they have a boring life, is invested in it, which is brilliant, right? Max, look, the F1 world champion being invested in sim racing is a dream to me. If you'd have said that would be a thing in 10 years, to me, 10 years ago, no way would I have believed that. I love that he's invested in it. I love that he took part. I wish he would have taken a moment about his reaction. And he's the type of guy that's strong-headed and he'll completely stand by it, and as will his fans. But silly stuff like yesterday on Twitter, someone disagreeing with me completely on my stance of let's just take a moment, let's just take a moment, telling me that legal action should be taken and MSG should be sued. I'm not sure what you're suing motorsport games for. Servers crash, games crash. That's the internet. Sometimes things go wrong. But I can't get away from it. It just doesn't. It's for me. It's not about saying particularly anything bad about Max Verstappen in any way. I just wish he'd taken a moment, and I wish people wouldn't jump on it like rabid. I don't know, just completely blind to the reality of the situation. Look, what is very important to be said is other platforms that have hosted sim races have had issues. I've been on 2 other platforms away from R Factor 2 where races have been cancelled because of various issues. People being unable to join, server crashes, game crashes, right? But why is it that right now this has become such a thing? Because, well, there are a few factors, I guess. One, maybe because Max had what he had to say. And I think people are hating on motorsport games, and that's unfortunate. But I don't know. It just seems incredibly bad, especially, let's not forget the tweet that Team Redline put out because the iRacing Daytona, they had to leave the iRacing Daytona race with 2 cars because of disconnects. Nobody remembers that, and it wasn't long ago, but that was Max's team leaving a 24-hour endurance race on iRacing. Where's the outrage? Why are people going insane? This is the weird imbalance I'm not getting with. And I could talk about this and ramble on all day, quite honestly. But what I saw yesterday was a completely disjointed, over the top reaction about something which can be fixed. And look, people are saying this has happened before on R Factor 2. It has. Did R Factor 2 fix bugs? Yes. Categorically, R Factor 2 fixed tons and tons and tons of bugs. Now, what does this say? I'm personally of the opinion that R Factor 2 should organise a mass test when they think they've got fixes, and I'd happily be a part of it, and I'm sure hundreds of people would. Maybe they've not tested them enough. I don't know. But one thing is for certain. R Factor 2 didn't host the virtual Le Mans knowing this was going to happen. They hosted it wanting it to be a perfect thing. Look, I already know that people will disagree with me, and it's absolutely fine because I seem to be one of the few on the internet that holds this sort of chill kind of thing. But maybe it's because I've been around a while, and I'm not saying that's particularly a good thing, but I think most people who have been around a while have had this disappointment with an endurance sim racing event, and it's completely over the top, the reaction. And that's really, I think I've said most things. I wish he would have said, "That's unfortunate. I'm off to go and have a cup of tea now," which is what I did once. I literally said that, and everyone was like, "What?" As they were raging. I was like, "Well, it's done now, isn't it?" Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? But yeah, I think it's just terribly unfortunate, and it's something I care about deeply. And it can only get better if we all sort of stick together. And I want more than one option. I am one of these people that wants more than one option. I don't want sim racing to be a one platform destination because it will never work. It will never work for the masses. And let me just also point something out. I've had a couple of messages this morning saying how much the reaction to the issues has put someone off sim racing in general. I'm just saying, people don't see their outrage. The optics of that is genuinely a worse look for sim racing than the actual issues that happened in the race. And I'm not sure why people aren't seeing that. I saw it immediately, and I had an unprompted message to that effect this morning, that it's put someone off sim racing because it looks like some kind of like closed shop, you know, of elitists who you know just spit the dummy out. It's food for thought for people. It's food for thought. I want sim racing to encompass everyone. I want to welcome everyone to it, whether that be on R Factor 2, Race Room, iRacing, Assetto Corsa Competizione, anything, whatever, ones I've forgotten. And I think reacting in such a bad way is only a bad thing for sim racing in general. And hopefully everything will not just be on one platform in years to come. But there we go. I've said lots, and I could talk a lot about it. Look, I will just say this: if people are watching this on replay, if your intent is to put a toxic comment down below, don't bother. I can't be bothered. Right, I'll see you later, guys. I'm going to be going live over on Twitch with, I think I'm playing Red Dead Redemption this morning. So twitch.tv/pit lanes. And I'll be back here 9 a.m. in the morning with your latest F1 news. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. And I'll see you later.